The opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest!
And hello everyone and welcome to Scarefest Radio. It's a big night for Scarefest Radio. I'm your host Wes Forsyth and we are doing video tonight. I don't know if anybody's watching. I don't look at the numbers. I don't care. I do all this for me. One thing, okay, everything is skewered tonight because we're launching our video production. I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go on. And I have, for the very first time in the history, well, okay, one time I actually went to an actual radio station and they had a producer, but I have a producer tonight. My lovely wife, Anita, is producing the show tonight. She is clicking buttons for me so that I don't got to. I will remind everybody that Scarefest Radio is sponsored by Spirit Mechanics for your spiritual health and well-being. And by Coyote Chris Sutton, bringing light to the darkest places, coyotechris.com. And our sponsor, kyhorse.com. Mother's Day is just around the corner and you know your mom loves leather. Don't forget the Mineral Springs paranormal investigation with the lovely and talented Elizabeth Saint coming up in Alton, Illinois, March 24th. And put this on your calendar, local people. Lexington Comic-Con, March 9th through 11th. I'll be there the 10th if you actually care about meeting me. But Scarefest will have a booth. You'll find me in the Scarefest booth March 9th through 11th, but I'll be there the 10th. In other words, I couldn't get out of it all 3 days. There you go. Click. Now, the guest mics are hot. Our biggest problem, actually, is because me and Anita have to share a mouse now because I still have to do some of this stuff on the computer. Our guest tonight, Steve Kulls. There you go. Steve Kulls, of course, we've had him on the show as the Squatch detective, the cryptozoologist that he is. But tonight we're talking paranormal. We're talking ghosts and goblins and demons and all that good stuff. So we got that going on. Now, the other thing, okay, this entire video experiment came about because Brandon, the owner of Scarefest, sends me a text this week and says, "Hey, let's do video." And so I said, "Well, Brandon, I'm kind of already doing video for my other show. Why don't we just do it for both shows?" Oh, okay. So so here we go. We're launching Scarefest TV, as it were, and I choose this week to get a head cold. Yes. And now, all of a sudden, I have an echo. So that's wonderful, but it'll go away. That's a Skype thing. But anyway, so in between the video production, when I'm not on camera, I will, of course, be blowing my nose and that type of thing. So, first of all, I do need to go ahead and tag my co-host, Mr. Billy Crank.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
So I kind of dropped this on Billy this week. It's like Billy don't even know half time when he's co-hosting because he's our rotating host. And then I say, "Hey, Billy, can you host? And do you want to do video?" So that's but so far it is just absolutely flawless. How has your winter treated you, Billy?
It's treated me pretty good, man. I'm so ready for summer. This winter's been terrible.
Well, if it's treated you good, why don't you want to go back? Why do you should want to embrace the muck?
Embrace the muck. Oh
It's-
yeah.
Have you washed away yet? How's the rain doing down in your part of the area?
It is flooded here in Little Old Bergen. I'm next to Harrington Lake, and man, all this little certain parts of this little town, it's flooded. And there's an old history with this town. It's all underground caves and caverns. So floods real easy on the outskirts of town, and so a lot of people around here is having some trouble, but they'll get through it. They're used to it by now. Been happening around here for years. So.
We have it around us, but where my house is built, I basically if my house floods, you guys are dead. That's just I watch your asses float by. That's we're far
right
enough above the
dam up here.
we're far enough above the floodplain when like I posted on Facebook this week, that ark up in the park up in northern Kentucky that they built, that won't seem like such a terrible idea to so many people. Okay, let's get to our guest now, Mr. Steve Kulls.
Hello,
Good to have you on the
Wes.
show, brother.
We're getting the video switched around here.
That thing disappeared.
There, see? Don't panic and don't say, oh shit, on the radio, wife. Anyway. Steve, thank you for being a part of this glorious experiment that we call Scarefest Radio.
Well, as we said, I'm experimenting too with a new audio system, and I hope your echo has gone away. I wasn't sure if that was because of my end and the
No,
mic.
that is something that Skype does every now and then just to throw you a curveball. There is no rhyme, there is no reason, just out of the blue, it will it will do that. Now, I've talked to you a lot of times about Bigfoot. Because I think, when you come to Scarefest, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about cryptozoology. Yep. But now you've been by the booth and we've talked, and, I knew that you did paranormal investigations. And, of course, I know your significant other, Stacy, is a well-respected paranormal investigator. Probably more people know that she's into it than you, but hey, that's just me. Now, you are part of the Extreme Paranormal Encounter Response Team.
Yes, sir, I am. I'm there. Right now, I'm the acting director, and I am the demonologist for the team as well.
Now, incidentally, everybody, that spells Eepert. It's kind of expert if you want to do the extreme. I know that's what you were getting at, but it's Eepert. E-P-E-R-T. Eepert. Stacy Horton, Tom Conwell, of course, he's a ufologist that we've had on the show. Tim Conwell, who, that is such a coincidence to have a Tim and a Tom, and both have the last name Conwell. I'm assuming they're related.
Yeah, just a little bit. Father-son.
Okay. Michelle Wagner, who we just had on the show a few weeks ago, and Jack Kenna, another paranormal investigator. And Jack, I like Jack because when we were at the, I guess it was a VIP party, Jack likes talking paranormal when he's drinking. And you can get it. You can get into some deep shit when you get a couple paranormal investigators talking whilst holding liquor in their hands.
That is very true. I tend not to talk cryptids when I'm drinking because that. But ghosts, hey, everybody sees them.
Now, now this was, you were actually booked this way. This wasn't my idea because once again, I never think of you in the ghost realm. But when they said that you were coming on the show, and you appeared on an episode of Paranormal Survivor.
I certainly did.
What before I even or I'll leave, Billy can go into the history of it or whatever, but I do want to know, what was that episode about? What event were you all telling the story of?
Well, it was kind of a series of events between Stacy and me that were kind of parallel. And what had occurred was she was doing an investigation with a friend of hers at another location after she did not want to go to the location I was going at because she had sensed that something was really wrong about that location. My take on it was, I got to be there because there's going to be 5 or 6 people there, and I just feel I got to go there to keep their backs. So what ended up happening was that she ended up, and her friend ended up seeing something extremely similar to what we had seen at the end of the night at that other location. So we think they're kind of related, but the stuff that I had encountered at that place was pretty phenomenal, and the after effects were very interesting. So that's how that episode came about and what the general gist of it is.
Now, the one thing I always ask when somebody goes on these recreation type shows, how accurately was this, two parts, how accurately did they represent the parts that you were not sitting there telling them with your own lips? And the part that I noticed it was a different show, but they took all the interviews that they did and they kind of shuffled the deck, if you will. In other words, the story, I was sitting there listening to the story, and I've heard this story 100 times, and I'm going, no, that's part of another story. That's part of another. Was the show true to the way things happen?
Yeah, they actually got the story probably about 95% right. They did take some artistic licensing with parts they didn't ask us questions on. And I can do a blow-by-blow breakdown. It starts off with basically Stacy and how she got involved in the paranormal. And she was having she was in a relationship at the time. And the way they portrayed it was that they were living together. Well, they weren't, strangely enough. But they just, took that upon themselves. They never really asked that question. So a little artistic license there. She had a dream about this guy dying in a crash. As it turned out, she warned him. He ended up dying in a crash a week or so later. The other thing was that, they said that she was notified by the police. She actually wasn't. She was notified by his friends. They were the first ones to call her. So, I mean, other than that, it was pretty straight on as far as the chain of events. Now, some of the things may have been over-dramatized. There was one particular event where there was a chair that got moved, and I had told them it only moved about a foot, maybe, if that. And they had to go across the floor, which I thought was kind of funny. And they had all the investigators. They had me, and it's kind of funny because we kind of make fun of the guy that they had portray me. We said he kind of looked like Uncle Fester, just because. But anyway, and he was actually dressed very much like I was for the studio interview, which was kind of funny. He was wearing a black sweater. But the people he had with him, I kind of chuckled because they were all in white shirts and black ties and black trousers. They looked like the Men in Black. And, of course, my folks don't look anything, when we were in there. It wasn't, number one, it wasn't a team event. It was a bunch of people from our team and some extras. And at the time, we weren't even expert back then. We were with another paranormal team. So we had just gone to this old abandoned no-tell motel that had a very big penchant for bad stuff going on. It was a hotel that was used to house sex offenders post-release, and apparently there was a guy that had walked across the street. It's a rural area. A guy walked across the street to go to the convenience store, and he got run down by a vehicle right in front of the place. So it had a very ominous history to it. If you want me to go into it deep now, I will, and I'll give you kind of the blow-by-blow of the events that actually happened at the hotel.
Well, let's take a commercial break, and then we've got the whole show to fill, so we'll get into that. But everybody, you're listening to Scarefest Radio and possibly watching us on Scarefest TV, if you're into that kind of thing. Do you feel lost in life? Do you seem to be stuck in emotions that are not yours? Is your home not the sanctuary it should be? Contact Spirit Mechanics, where they take a team approach to your metaphysical and spiritual problems. Spirit Mechanics specializes in aura cleansing, stone attunement, attachment removal, and house cleansings. Spirit Mechanics tailors their approach to your individual spiritual path and needs. Find them every month at Lexington, Kentucky's Mystical Fair, mysticalfairlex.com, or on Facebook by searching Spirit Mechanics, that's MECHANIX. Spirit Mechanics, for your spiritual health and well-being. Everyone knows that the Scarefest has the best fans, and that they love all things creative and unique. The Scarefest is now taking vendor applications. The Scarefest is the largest independently owned celebrity, horror, and Halloween expo in the U.S., and 2018 marks our 11th anniversary. Find out what our long-term vendors and artists already know. The Scarefest is the place to display your unique item. Email vendors@thescarefest.com for more information. Sign up before March 31st and have your link added to thescarefest.com vendor guide. Upgrade to featured vendor status and get ad placement in our program plus social media shoutouts. The Scarefest, the place for your unique merchandise. And welcome back to Scarefest Radio. Our guest tonight is Steve Kulls. My co-host is Billy Crank. Billy, I'm going to go ahead and wait. Before I turn over to Billy, I forgot on the vendor thing. Scarefest vendors, if you're listening, you've got till the end of March to get your booth registered to get on the website. We've got a little vendor guide to give you a little extra advertising. If you wait till after March 31st to get on that website, you will have to be a featured vendor. I do want to remind everybody of that. So right now is the time. If you're not planning on going featured, go ahead and get that extra advertising, that extra link on thescarefest.com. Billy, over to you.
Mr. Kulls, thanks for joining us tonight and hanging out, skipping out on your wine party. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hey, what's going on? Okay.
Hey.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right, man. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem at all. My pleasure.
Yeah. Right on. Do you believe in spirits or ghosts?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I grew up. Mind you, my parents were very conservative, very quiet people, very down-to-earth, realistic people. And it started when I was a little kid, and they kept it from me for a long time. And finally, I learned that my father had been seeing this apparition of a woman in the house. And he's seen it several times. And, usually it's the opposite. Usually it's the woman who sees something and the husband says, "Oh, you're crazy." Well, my mother would turn around and go, "Bill, you're nuts." and until one day she was laying on the couch, and then there goes the woman, walked right by the, right through the living room. So my mother had seen it. And I looked at both of them and said, "You're crazy." Until one day when I was about 15 years old, I had seen this shadow of a woman walk to our front room, and I was like, and you got to understand that to the right of me would have been where that front room is, and to the left of me would have been where, the kitchen was and the living room and all, and that my bedroom kind of sat in between. And I was like, walked into a little front room, and I kind of could look through the bedroom there to my parents' bedroom, because we had two doors, and I kind of watched so I was like, So I was like, hey, Mom, what are you doing in the front room? And my mom answers me from the kitchen the other way. So I get up, I go right to the front room, there's nobody there. So, yes, I had seen that afterwards. So it always stuck in my head that, hey, man, you know what? I know what I saw, and I know what my parents have been saying, so there's got to be something to that. So it was never really a question to me. And the house that I lived in was built in the 1880s. So, and actually there was a woman who had lived there and who died in the house that had lived there pretty much her whole entire life, from growing up till she died. So it made a lot of sense.
Negative.
I'm sorry?
But wasn't nothing negative like the lady.
Oh, no. It was nothing bad, nothing evil. In fact, that thought really hadn't even occurred to me. Even, The Exorcist to me was fiction at that time to me. Then as I was into the crypto thing and doing all that, I'm an investigator by nature. That's the reason why I got into the crypto thing. I like investigating things. I find mysteries like Oak Island and UFOs, even the Bermuda Triangle and stuff like that. They fascinate me because I'm a realist. I like to see what's real, what's tangible, what's not. And then all of a sudden we had the wave of the ghost shows in the early 2000s. And I said, that's all pretty interesting stuff. And it kind of spurred my interest into that. And why can't I apply my well-grounded science and my background of being an investigator to the paranormal side? And then I also found that, some of the equipment used in the paranormal side we can use in the cryptid side. Like at the time, a lot of crypto guys weren't using high-end recorders, but the paranormal side was. So that was really big. Using a DVR system, with a little ingenuity, and you can get one of those hooked up out in the field. And we've used those in the past to monitor our campsites at night. Shooting them out in directions to see if anything is creeping around the campsite at night. It's kind of cool because one night we actually got a fox running right by the camera. So some of those things really are they went hand in hand. So growing up, I didn't like bullies. When I was a very young kid, and this is some of the personal reasons. When I was a very young kid, I was overweight. I was 134 pounds in fourth grade, which is, when I graduated high school, I was 145. So I had slimmed up. But when I was in elementary, I was kind of a hefty kid, and, they kind of made me a target for bullies. So I don't like bullies. And when I slimmed up, those bullies got answered. But, I realized that there are spiritual bullies, and they're called demons and demonics. And that is something that, when I see somebody in distress, and that's kind of the purpose for expert, is because a lot of there's teams out there in the United States that they run into, the demons, and they don't know how to deal with them. They kind of, I've seen groups, and I'm not saying this is universal, but I'm saying I have seen a group or two leave these people that are being plagued with demons hanging because they're too afraid to deal with it. So I wasn't going to be that way. And, that's when I started my studies in demonology, and I ended up, to date, I have performed 3 deliverances on residences. And if one doesn't think they're there spiritually, I mean, I'm a God-fearing man, and they're there. I mean, there is no doubt. I have seen this, and I have people that were skeptical about it too. At the end of really the second deliverance I did, there was some definite physical results of the person being oppressed. That was immediate almost, and it got the skeptic, who was a law enforcement officer, turned around on me, and I would not, and he said to me point blank, I would not have believed that if I didn't see it myself. And, does that make me a great person? No, I'm just a tool, and I draw upon the strength of, my Savior. And that's how I go about it. I try not to take any claim that I'm any great person for doing this. That's just my calling, per se. And that's what I do.
That's very fascinating. Back to you, Wes. Appreciate you, Mr. Cole.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, Steve, on what you talked about there, spiritual bullies. Now, you referred to them, and you can take me down a theological road if you want to, or you can keep it secular. But now, my experience in the field is there are spiritual bullies that, plenty of them, that don't rise to the level of what I would call demonic. But then again, I talk to a lot of people in the spiritual field who there's two types. There's ghost and there's demons. And some of them don't even believe there's ghosts, but we won't even get into that. How do you tell the difference between just a really, what I like to call a dick ghost versus something that falls into the demonic range? And as a follow-up, is there anything in between that in your mind?
Well, I kind of look at it, there's a hierarchy of demons. And there's powerful demons and there's lesser demons, aka the minions, and they have a lot lesser abilities or strengths. Mind you, the weakest demon has much more power than any human spirit could have. So the difference is that people can feel when it comes to a malignant spirit or a spirit that's not too happy, a malevolent spirit. You will see people feel very uncomfortable around that. You will see them little annoyances, but they never get any greater than just a little petty annoyances, maybe a bang or two, and just like feeling like they're being watched, or they may see something looming over them. It's kind of a hit or miss thing. Where we see the demons, we see a progression in the frequency of events. It'll start off with obviously infestation, we call that, scratching, banging, the ghostly stuff, and it will eventually accelerate into more poltergeist-like activities, like moving a chair across the room, throwing objects, breaking things, teleportation of different items. There's been times where, items have disappeared off a table, according to some reports, and then days later they appear on someplace else. So you see the increase in strength. But the big difference in a spiritual bully versus a demonic bully is the end result of how it's affecting the people. A spiritual bully can, people will take it and kind of laugh it off and, yeah, whatever. Whereas the people that are oppressed, they can't take it anymore. And they not only deal with just a physical, but they also deal with a lot of mental stuff as well. They start getting feelings of worthlessness, feelings that there's no hope. I remember the one particular case I did back in 2014. The build-up to that was unbelievable. We had heard about the story. We were actually asked by another paranormal team to come in and kind of intervene. Because they didn't, and that, luckily, that's the sign of a great team, is when they say, hey, listen, we're not equipped to handle this. Let's find somebody that can. So we went over and we did what we did. And actually, I don't know if you guys probably know Dan Kleiss. He's the owner of the Hinsdale House. He actually was the team leader of that group. So we went out there and we met with Tina. I'm sorry, I don't want to throw a name, but everybody knows the Tina story that the Buffalo parents. So we met her, and her story was unbelievable. And you could see she was struggling with medical issues that couldn't be resolved. I mean, they were saying she was internally bleeding, but they couldn't figure out how or why. Everybody in her family, everybody in her relationships kind of fell off. She felt alone. She felt by herself. And that's something demonics like to do, divide and conquer and make the target feel isolated. So we go in, we meet her, we go in, and the lead up to that is after we met her, first time ever, even at my own house, I ended up, and it was the weirdest thing because at the time I lived in a city And we lived on a second floor, and the only way anybody could move around in the hallway, even if it was downstairs, upstairs, they would turn a sensor light on. Now, we had a door in the living room, and there was a peephole, and I could look out the peephole. So if I heard something out there, I could look out and, okay, the light's on, so somebody's out there. Well, I heard very distinctly, and Stacy heard it as well, my fiance. She heard, we heard this almost sound like a man's voice go, meow. And I kind of looked. I looked out the door window, and it's completely pitch black out there. I'm like, the sensor lights aren't on. And the next thing you know, I end up going, what's on my arm? And I look on my arm, and there was almost 3 cat scratches along my arm. See, what a lot of people don't know is that when you deal with the preternatural, it not only affects the client, but they know you're involved now. They're going to go after you. And that's a big difference. A human-bound spirit will only affect people on a property or a specific area, whereas a preternatural, they're like a network. They can have another demon come after us. They can attack worldwide if they want to. And not only that, but we were also dealing with a lot of, almost like oppressive types of items ourselves. Stacy and I, within a week of meeting her, we ended up losing our jobs. We're both unemployed. A couple of our team members that we were going to take to the deliverance, they had family crisis all of a sudden pop up. We drove through an unexpected snowstorm to get to there. And the psychic that was on the team that called us in, she ended up getting 2 flat tires on the way to the deliverance. Not 1, but 2. So all these things kind of build up. You can see how there's roadblocks. That's something that a human-bound spirit just wouldn't have the ability to do. So we get there, and to make the long story short, we do the deliverance, and I prep the team without her being there, and I tell them what I expect the sign of deliverance to be, which usually, in my experiences, has always been like a severe vomiting episode. We end up getting there, and she looks like she's 7 months pregnant, and that's how distended her stomach was. And she wasn't really in too much, she was in discomfort, but she was functioning very well. And you just want to see the honesty and we got there, and she was like, "Can I give you some money? You guys are spending the night." No, we don't want anything for what we do. She says, "Well, I'm going to order pizza then, because at least I'm going to feed you." All right, we'll take pizza. That's a fair trade, but we're not going to take your money. So we end up, eating, and that to me was kind of it's good to break bread with everybody and say good things. And so then we go up, I do the rite, Stacy assisted. We all felt something. At one point in the rite, the dogs in the house went completely batshit crazy, for a better term. They just started howling and barking for no reason at all. And we come downstairs after deliverance, and the room feels a lot lighter. It's almost like you could see the room actually lighten up a little bit after we had performed the rite. We end up going downstairs, and I start blessing the house, and I do the blessing, and then I put medals on the 4 corners of the property, the St. Benedict's medals. I'm, making sure everything is grounded. I come in, and she is on the couch writhing in pain now. And so while everybody's kind of like fussing over her, I just move to the corner, and I start just saying prayers and asking for her to, basically asking, my Creator to make sure that, come on, please just make her better, get this thing out. Next thing you know, she's heave-hoing in a garbage pail. Well, she stands up, and her 7-month pregnant look is no longer that way. Her belly's completely flat. And everybody just, when she stood up, everybody just gasped. It's like that whole distension was gone. And to this day, and we check up with her, we check up with her at least once or twice a year. Now, we checked up with her a couple years ago after the first checkup. Everything was good. She's doing wonderful. She goes, you wouldn't believe it, the very next day, people that my family that had never, had kind of shunned me. Now all of a sudden they're knocking at my door wanting me to. So it's almost like the door opened back up for her. The second year call was even more interesting, because as Father Malachi Martin had once talked, when you do these things, there's a lot of demonic residue. It affects you, no matter it takes something from you. Well, about a week and a half to 2 weeks after I did the deliverance, for some strange reason that the doctors still can't explain to this day, was I got Bell's palsy. And I caught it real quick, and if people don't know, the left side of my face became paralyzed. And if you don't handle it quick enough, it can become permanent. But luckily, as soon as it started happening, I'm going, what? And I went right to the ER. So I got on antibiotics real quick, and it had dissipated. The second year call-in, we talked, I got in a discussion, well, actually, Stacy got in a discussion with her. And she goes, I meant to tell you something last time we talked. She goes, the strangest thing, the only thing that I had really negative happen to me, she goes, about 2 weeks after you guys came up and did deliverance, I got Bell's palsy. So she had suffered the same thing I had. Never knew it until last year when we talked to her. So that in of itself is very, very, too coincidental for it not to be, something. And that, again, is how the preternatural can strike, whereas human spirits can't really drag you into that. So I don't know if I answered Wes's question about kind of the
I'd say you overshot the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll grant you, when they give you Bell's palsy, they're probably not a ghost. We're going to take our commercial break. Excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat here. There it goes.
Ribbit.
Anyway, after the break, we will do our 3-day pass giveaway. We're going to do it on the Facebook group, the Facebook Celebrity Fandom Horror, the group, the one with the big long title that I can never remember all of it. You're listening to Scarefest Radio.
Coyote Chris Sutton.
Shamanism.
Spiritual advisement.
Paranormal investigations.
Inspirational presentations.
Bringing light to the darkest places for over 20 years. Go to coyotechris.com to learn more. Are you considered an authority in your field? Do you have a knowledge of your passion that you want to share? The Scarefest is now taking speaker and seminar applications. Everyone knows that the Scarefest is America's premier horror and paranormal convention. What you may not know is that in addition to their celebrities and world-famous vendor exposition, they also schedule a wide range of seminars and panels all 3 days of the event. They are always looking for speakers that go beyond the typical how to ghost hunt and push the limits of the imagination. Ufology, cryptozoology, serial killers, movie magic, spirituality and beyond, tales of the bizarre and investigations of the unknown. To be a part of an event that you will always remember, request your application now. Email speakers@thescarefest.com. And welcome back to Scarefest Radio. Okay, we're going to do our 3-day pass giveaway now. Once again, on the Scarefest Horror Celebrity Fandom Halloween Expo. That's the one. Under the banner with Steve Cole's lovely picture, the one where I say tonight at 9 p.m. or something like that. I believe the exact quote was, "Yeah, this happens at 9 p.m. We are go for video, we think." Under that banner, post, comment, "Bill, you're nuts. Bill, you are nuts." That was a quote from the show that kind of tickled me. So that will be our... That will be the first person to write a comment that says, "Bill, you're nuts," or "Bill, you are nuts," and I'm not even big on spelling tonight. you will win a 3-day pass to Scarefest 11, Scarefest 2018. Billy, take it away for a minute.
Hey, Mr. Kulls. Man, while you were talking, I thought of something that happened to me that I don't really talk about, and very few people know. All right, I went to an investigation down in southern Kentucky, and I wanted to do a Facebook Live video, and so I wanted to be by myself. So everybody left the house, and I went in, walked around, played with the camera a little bit. I wasn't enticing any spirits or anything. I was just kind of asking questions, and I wasn't being demanding or nothing like that. And I did it, and then I walked out, and we were leaving, and I can remember that I was feeling I was really upset when I was leaving for no reason, and I didn't want to leave, and I was really pissed off because I was leaving. I wanted to stay, and I got in my vehicle from the hotel and then started my journey back home, and I started feeling sick, like ill, like food poisoning or something like that. So, I got home, and this went on for like 2 weeks or something. I went to the doctor, I got blood work done. I thought I was dying. Like this was like a constant, like ill in my stomach, heart racing, and kind of angry. It was a really bad experience for me, but needless to say, I learned not to mess with that stuff if you don't know what you're doing. But I got the blood work done, and everything come back fine, and I was still sick. I was so sure that I had cancer or something crazy like that, and I went to church, and I got prayed for. I told everybody what would happen, what I did, and a couple of the members of the church understood, because they do similar paranormal investigations and stuff, and I told them, they prayed for me, and I walked out of there feeling brand new. So my question is, what kind of spirit do you think that was, or what do you think it was? A demon? Do you think it was a what do you think attached itself to me at that point in time?
Well, it's entirely possible. Again, with the big determining factor there, I think, is the distance. I mean, usually with an earthbound spirit, usually when you remove yourself from the arena per se, you should feel some relief. I've been in demonic cases where you step out of the house and you feel much, much better. But, for something to go on for a couple of weeks, to send you to the hospital.
Oh, this went on for a month.
Yeah, exactly. That does not, to me, sound like it's any type of human spirit. But people can understand, and this is, people say, why, I've seen a lot of articles on, why are exorcisms on the rise, or why is the demonic seem to be on the rise? Well, there's a twofold thing is that we're seeing less and less people going to faith. At least that's my opinion. That's part of it. But the real other part of it is that just like we see in the crypto world, but we see in the ghost world, we see a lot of people who, don't belong to parts or groups, but they grab their digital recorders and they run off to do these little, people don't understand that when you do an EVP session, we hear so much bad things about Ouija boards, that an EVP session is the same thing as a Ouija board, basically. You're opening up doors. If you don't properly close them or properly protect yourself while you're doing that, that can lead to a lot of problems. I know, there are psychics that like to, quote unquote, trans channel. That was something that Stacy tried and had a very bad effect to her, to the point where she required me to exercise something that got into her. So, when you open yourself up for attack without some protection or without the right wording, you can definitely, have that on you. So my thing is if you still want to continue to pursue that, just pursue it with a little more caution and with a little more trepidation, you'll do just fine. But we have too many people that go out there and say, hey, anybody, anything out here, any spirit, any whatever, and what do you think happens? And it also depends on the venue too. One of the worst venues you can ever go to is an abandoned church or a place that was once a church, because the unholy loves to reclaim which was once holy. So, that's huge. When I kind of give people caveats on that. The other thing too is the previous person I spoke about, where I had to perform that deliverance. She was dabbling with EVPs too, and many, many years early had been dabbling with a Ouija board. So I think she was actually under oppression for a long time, or at least noticed. And that's the other thing too, is the demonologists were noticed. So I'm always watching my six for signs that something's trying to get at me. And Father Malachi Martin, who I very much admire, some of his writings and works, always talked about people that are under demonic influence. And he talked about like walking through crowds and all of a sudden watching somebody just giving him like the evil eye or the stare. And every once in a while I get that too. I'm looking at it, somebody just looking dirty at me. Why is that? And could that be somebody in what they call a perfect possession state, where that person has accepted that they're possessed and just run with it? And that can occur as well. And I think it has occurred in some of the crimes you see that go on. And I'm not saying anything about anything recent, but because there is the mental illness factor as well. But you look at somebody like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker in L.A., who really had that look about him. I've looked into the eyes of the preternatural, or people who've been possessed or oppressed, and that's my one good gift. I've always been able to identify evil, and I'll give you another great story about real life in a second. But when you see that look in Ramirez's eyes, I see nothing but pure evil. And what did he do in court? But he raised his hand. What was on his hand was a pentagram. And he was a devil worshiper. And there was no doubt about that at all. So do I think that has effect on some folks sometimes? Absolutely. But getting back to, being able to identify, it's a talent I've always had. It's why I'm an investigator by trade. I'm a licensed private investigator. Much of my background has been retail crime. I'm one of those guys that can look at something and say, they're up to something without even them just walking in the door. And people would ask me, how the hell do you know that they're up to something? They just walked in the door. Well, I'll give you a great example. Many, many years ago, I was a paramedic for 5 years for an ambulance company, and I was a supervisor. So I traveled by myself in a blazer, and I assisted the ambulances that were there, which were generally a couple of EMTs. And we had this call in the city of Cohoes, New York, and I remember going there, and it was a psychiatric call. Basically, it's an involuntary commitment. The police decided to talk to the girl. Like, she's got to go. Something just flipped her out. She wants to go. They're all willing to take her. We show up. I show up just to supervise the scene. I'm with the police sergeant, and I'm looking at the girl we're taking. I'm looking at her boyfriend, and I'm going. I said to the sergeant, I go, why do I feel like we're taking the wrong person? Because her boyfriend just isn't right. And I'm watching this guy, and there's something about his eyes, and he's kind of pacing. I'm going, there's just something wrong about him. Well, the next day, I didn't find out till Friday, but the next day, that guy strangled a 15-year-old pregnant girl, cut her up into pieces in a bathtub, and then distributed her body. And that's how I knew I had that gift, just going, I'm just looking at somebody, and I just remember looking at him and feeling the pit in my stomach looking at him. It really bothered me, and I remember it bothering me for days until I saw his face flashed on the news, going, oh, it's just something you can't explain. But that's been my gift, and everybody has some gifts.
Well, thanks, man. I'm going to pass it right back over to you, Wes.
Okay, we're going to do our last commercial break. When I come back, I will announce tonight's winners, plural, and a few last questions for Steve. We'll be right back. Investigate the Mineral Springs Hotel with Elizabeth Saint of Ghost of Shepherdstown. Saturday, March 24th, join us in Alton, Illinois for a one-of-a-kind paranormal investigation of the Mineral Springs Hotel. Elizabeth Saint is teaming up with Cody Chris Sutton, Aaron and Nick of Ghostcrier, and myself to lead you on your tour of this famously haunted location. Will you find the artist that haunts the old hotel bar? Will you experience the Jasmine Lady? Or maybe the tragic tales that surround the old swimming pool will reveal their haunted history to you. It will be a night to remember. March 24th, Alton, Illinois. Investigate Mineral Springs with Elizabeth Saint. Go to coyoteChrisNow.com. And welcome back to our final segment of Scarefest Radio. I will say this video is quite entertaining in the commercial breaks when no one else can see what's going on. The our winners tonight. Now, here's what went on, people. Two people played. I don't know if anybody else played after them or not. I quit looking. But two people. I was watching the Facebook page, and both of these names popped up simultaneously. So, because they were so close together, I don't want to make the call and count on the algorithms at Facebook to give me the proper winner. Branson Gully and Christopher Preston, you will both go on our winners list. In just a few days, I should have the code to start sending out the emails. I'll be in touch with you to get your emails and get you your 3-day pass before we go too much further into the year, because I'm not going through what I went through last year at the last damn minute. Okay, closing out here, we've got about 5 minutes or so. Some things you touched on, Steve. In most of the, I hate to say serious demon cases, like there's non-serious demon cases. But do people usually? Once you get looking into the history and the background, like you brought up the Ouija board, do people usually, I'm going to say 99% of the time, isn't there something that they've either done in particular or some part of their life that opens them up to this?
Absolutely. The folks that usually have these types of things happen, there's all sorts of horrible things that occur. The one case I spoke of, it was the playing around of the paranormal at a very young age. But I've seen cases where we walked in and there's, for a better lack of word, there's a lot of family disruption going on. There is, and trust me, I've read about cases that may be incestual. There's affairs and PTSD histories and all kinds of abuse histories. So there's a lot of stuff that demonics take advantage of, because sometimes people go down a slippery slope and they're right on it. In some cases people are at such a breaking point for some reason or another that they're willing to accept any answer, almost like the quote unquote deal with the devil type of thing. Sometimes they're sneaky too, because there's been cases before where I've seen, where a child is letting, her little playmate, and the little imaginary friend isn't really an imaginary friend. There's been times I've gotten EVPs of little girls that I do not believe are little girls or little children. I believe they're something, that shouldn't be messed with. So my whole thing is that if you're a paranormal investigator, just watch your six, do something to spiritually protect yourself. And I don't care what it is. You don't have to, if you're agnostic and you want to believe it, crystals, surround yourself with white light, good vibrations, all that stuff. If that's the way you protect yourself, then do it, because it works. The same way I call upon my creator, Other people have other ways. Use them. Use them often, and always watch your six. And more importantly, watch your teammates 6 as well.
And I'm going to throw in 2 more caveats in there. That the 2 things that absolutely, now one you brought up, channeling. I'm sorry, I don't. The first time I was on an investigation with a psychic, and I work with psychics all the time, and she started channeling, this cold feeling just shot up my spine. Nothing scares me worse than seeing someone open themselves up that fully.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, and this is something, and we've seen them do it on TV, but one of the first investigations I went on with a group that I was with, one of the ladies walks upstairs and goes, "Use my energy." And I just thought, oh my God, because even if it's not a demon, let's say it's not a demon, my thing was, whatever this is might just go, well, thank you. I don't need it right now, but I'll talk to you next week. And I don't like to see stuff like that go on. We're pretty much at the end of the show. Got anything on the calendar you want to push? I know you do one thing. You got your new show coming up. Steve Kulls is coming back to the radio.
That's right. March 4th, Blog Talk Radio, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're starting up Squatch Detective Radio. We've been doing this since 2006. We've had about almost 2 years off, so it's time to bring back the show. SquatchDetectiveRadio.com for details.
You could have picked another time slot, though. That's my Sunday show.
I could have. I'm sorry. Well, the beautiful thing is, it's a podcast.
I know. You know what? I don't know if you're like this or not. Now, I like the interaction with the live listeners. I like seeing them in the chat room.
Love it.
I like the instant gratification. But
absolutely.
But I am having to adjust that my numbers don't hit up in the thousands until next Tuesday, next Wednesday. Now, you know, it's just that it's such a weird thing to be. Last week's Scarefest Radio, which I know that the live listens were not correct because we had more people in the chat room than it showed live, but the downloads on it were just off the chart.
Yep.
And I'm like, that means people got it on iTunes. They got it, you know, and I'm like,
yep.
Geez, people, why do I go to all this trouble? I should just record it, do it on Tuesday afternoon, and go to bed early. But I don't. That's the way I am.
You know what I love about Blog Talk though is that we have that live listener line. People can actually call in. It's a call-in radio. It's like a call-in show.
See now,
so you never know.
My thing is, I never had a call screener. I have Blog Talk on Sunday night available to me, but I never have a call screener. And without a call screener, live call-in shows, that is scarier than any ghost that I have ever encountered. Demons, I don't care.
I love a challenge.
But we can take live calls. We've done it. We've done it on Scarefest Radio. Everybody, this has been Scarefest Radio. Our guest tonight has been Steve Kulls. We've been talking about the paranormal side of his life, and we kind of cut off a couple of topics early. We just only so much you can fit in 1 hour's time. So, but then again, this is like his 4th time he's been on. We'll get him next time. Yeah, he'll be back. So don't forget, everybody. Lexington Comic-Con. Come down if you're looking for some Scarefest swag. They'll have their T-shirts. I don't know if they got the new stuff yet, but they will have the old stuff. If you're missing a shirt or you just want a good souvenir, come by and see us at the Lexington Comic-Con at the Convention Center in Lexington, March 9th through 11th. I personally will be there the 10th, and who knows, I might even come up with some gimmick to give away a free pass or something if you come up and, like, say, hashtag something or other. You know, just to be cute. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Scarefest Radio.